Flint spoke that it wasn't inevitable that this would be framed as a war on terror. And there was no inevitability to a president not coming down with a "we're going to fight back Al-Qaeda." What I also wonder, though, is how inevitable and how unfortunate it was just how little pushback there was against that framing. Because that was the other thing you saw. And I would put it down to three things. One of them, which I don't know enough about, but I'm pretty much convinced of, is that the party of opposition... Exactly. So I don't need to finish that point. But especially when it came to a lack of self-confidence on national security issues. And I think that was a very important framing piece. A second thing is it's very, and here I'll be a bit more generous and understanding, to make the counter-argument when you're being told we concede no ground to terrorists and this terrorist looks like that terrorist, look, they use the same means, looks like this other terrorist, to say we cede no ground to those people, constructing the alternative narrative of root causes, legitimate grievances, draining the swamp, why is it so easy for them to recruit, the rallying cry of undealt with grievances, grievances that the US feeds into. I don't think it was impossible to make that argument. I appreciate that it's a difficult argument to make, but the ground was ceded so dramatically. And unfortunately, I don't think we've turned that corner at all yet. I still think that to make those arguments, you're more likely to be attacked as an apologist, an appeaser, as being soft on terror, than as the smart person who's going to help us turn the corner and actually get to grips with this and be more effective against Al-Qaeda and restabilize the region and the world in which America conducts its national security interests. Unfortunately, we haven't turned that corner. It's much more difficult to do 6 years later. The fact that there was no pushback on day one made it more difficult, and I think there's a third reason. And I'm not convinced that this is the dominant reason, but I think it was a factor. If you go down the road of we have to take grievances seriously, we have to look at root causes, there are other ways of dealing with this, you very soon and inevitably, unavoidably, come face to face with the Israeli occupation. You can't build a counter-narrative and say, well, if we weren't so supportive of authoritarian regimes in the Middle East, perhaps if we didn't have so many American bases there, people wouldn't be quite so peeved at us. You can't begin to touch those issues without saying, and hey, we have a special relationship with Israel. And that special relationship plays out in a way that is an enabler of occupation and an enabler of the daily bloody soap opera watched in every Arab and many Muslim homes around the world, which is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, rather than an enabler of a resolution of that issue.